Hey friends, as I pop my knuckles, today is going to be a really quick impromptu video that I was not really planning on making, but I think it's pertinent for a lot of reasons. Lately, over I'd say the last few weeks, maybe even the last few months, I've been getting a lot of questions about fad diets and sort of odd dieting protocols and just very restrictive eating strategies, and people are just asking me questions, just sort of inquiring about it, or I see people attempting them, and I'm always a little baffled as to why this is such a continuous thing, because I feel like we've all sort of heard that cliche that fad, gimmicky diets don't really work, but it's for whatever reason within the fitness and health community and nutrition community, or world, there's always like a new fad diet coming out. It seems like every 3 to 12 months. And I wanted to just talk very quickly about why these fad protocols or dieting strategies don't really work. And one of the main reasons, I'll just be really blunt about it, one of the main reasons they generally do not work is because they're completely unsustainable. And sustainability when it comes to eating regimens is really important for obvious reasons. If it's not sustainable, it's not something that you're necessarily going to be keeping up with or participating in for a long period of time. Now, that may mean you may not see any results from its lack of sustainability because you just can't do it long enough to see any results, or it will trick you into thinking you're getting results very quickly because of how restrictive it is or how just extreme it might be, okay? So a lot of restrictive fad diets, the reason they work is because if you go from eating 2,500 to 3,000 calories a day, it's pure math. If you're eating 2,500 to 3,000 calories a day to 12 to 1,300 calories a day, you will lose something, okay? A lot of people assume it's weight. It's not weight. If you go from 2,500 calories a day, that's what you normally eat, somewhere in that ballpark, to eating 1,200 calories a day, you are going to initially lose a lot of water, okay? It is not necessarily excess body fat. It's not lean tissue. You're shedding water. And the reason is because generally, if you're cutting your calories that dramatically, you're also cutting out a lot of food items that are going to go into your body and that are going to basically become glucose, which is going to make you hang on to more water. That's what glucose does. Okay, we have glucose in our muscle fibers. So when I eat carbohydrates, my liver converts it into glucose. Glucose is sent to other parts of my body for use, and it also means I'm going to be hanging on to more water. So carbohydrates are good for fuel, good for fueling workouts in here, good for being active, good for the brain in a lot of ways, and it's going to make me hang on to a little bit of water, okay? So when you go on a restrictive eating regimen, or you start dramatically cutting your calories from like 2,500 to 3,000 to 1,200 or 1,000, all of a sudden you're losing a bunch of water that you've been hanging on to, maybe for a long time, maybe for a short period of time, but that's what you're losing. You're not losing weight, you're losing water, okay? So that's another reason why it's not sustainable, because here's the thing. You can only eat 1,000 to 1,200 calories for so long. It's not that much food. Eventually, the willpower train will derail, because that's what happens when we're human beings. This leads to the non-sustainable portion of it too. You're eventually going to be eating a normal amount of calories, which is going to be anywhere between, the 1,800 to 2,500 range, depending on a lot of different factors, but that's generally where people are. That's why they say, the average is 2,000, on the nutritional scale and for food products and stuff. So once you start eating normal again, you're going to gain all that water back, which means you're going to go right back to your initial weight. Okay, so you're not losing that weight when you dramatically cut your calories. It's very, very temporary. Okay, this is why it doesn't necessarily work. So that's number one, why it's not sustainable. The other portion that doesn't get talked about a lot, because you can really get in the weeds on it, is you're going to have a negative compensation effect with your hormones and probably with your calorie consumption. So there will be a dramatic and negative, typically hormonal effect from slashing your calories to very little all of a sudden, because that's when the body goes on high alert and saying, oh, we can only make do with so many calories, so let's downregulate certain hormones so that we can survive, and so there's no major negative compensation. Well, then again, the second you start eating normal, hormones upregulate, which leads to getting more water. You might gain more weight than you originally started with because you may be eating at a surplus at some point. Like, you may go 2 to 3 weeks of really dramatically cutting your calories, and then the willpower train derails, which it inevitably and invariably does, and you might be consuming more calories just because you're just so hungry, you're having a tough time feeling full and feeling satiated. Okay, so this is why we call it the yo-yo effect, where you cut your calories and you have this negative compensation effect and this negative rebound, and then all of a sudden you're gaining weight, and then you try it again, you lose a little bit of weight, and then the willpower train derails, and then you go back up, and then it's just like this negative cycle. And that's why it's not sustainable. So, a much more pragmatic, and I think it's actually an easier approach, is if you're going to aim for fat loss, which is what we've done with a lot of our clients, with a lot of you guys, is we set very, very appropriate small calorie deficits that are much more sustainable because you're not dramatically cutting your calories. So let's say hypothetically you're eating around 2,800 calories, somewhere in between 2,500 and 3,000 calories a day. But that's a surplus for you, so maybe slowly but surely over the years you've been gaining weight, you've been becoming less active and that sort of thing. Well, then if we cut your calories down to 2,400 or 2,300 or 2,500 even, it's a very, very small deficit, so it's much more doable. You're not dramatically cutting your calories, okay? You may not lose as much water weight initially. You'll probably lose a little bit of water weight. You may not lose as much initially, but it's something that you can do for a long, extended period of time, okay? And that's what we're shooting for. We're shooting for sustainable, we're shooting for doable, we're shooting for realistic here, okay? Because the only way you're gonna have sustainable results, not just initial water weight loss, the only way you're gonna have those sustainable results for a long period of time is if you have a sustainable and doable and pragmatic eating regimen, okay? Something that you can actually follow through with for a long period of time, okay? I'm using my hands a lot. It's because I'm passionate about this stuff. And ultimately, this is why fad diets don't work, never have, probably never will, okay? So, a balanced macronutrient ratio, I don't really think of that as a diet per se. That's more of just like getting a good ratio of healthy food groups, okay? Some people might try to market it as a gimmicky type fad diet, but really it's just about getting a balanced diet at the end of the day, okay? And it requires a little bit of work. It requires a little bit of sustained period of time in order to achieve these results. You have to do it for a little while. You have to kind of put in the work, but it should be as easy as possible. It shouldn't be as hard as possible, okay? So that's why we're always talking to our clients about making it easier rather than harder. Find, food groups that you love to eat on a consistent daily basis. If you have to eat a protein bar occasionally to get a little bit more protein and satiate you to get to lunch or to get to dinner, then do it. It may not be optimal. You might not be eating broccoli at your desk at work, but it's still better if you can do it for a long period of time. It's still better if it's sustainable, okay? So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Pamela about this stuff, because we talk about this all day and we read about it all day, and this is literally what we study for hours and hours on end. And if you guys want more in-depth reading on some of this, and you're wanting to look at some of the sources that we look at and that we the reputable sources that we turn to if we have questions and things like that, feel free to look up Dr. Mike Israetel, Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, Dr. Susan Kleiner, nutritionist who has been in the field for 30 plus years, and she's always at the fitness summit every year. She's amazing. She's got a wealth of knowledge about this stuff and why these fad diets, they come and they go because they don't work, they're not sustainable. And at the end of the day, it's just a distraction from doing the real work, which is be a little bit active, 3 or 4 days a week of physical activity in some capacity. I'm partial to lifting, so you can gain that lean tissue. which is great for your metabolism. Having a balanced diet, focusing on calories first, because that's going to be the most important rung of the fat loss, hierarchy. Making sure you're getting plenty of protein, and then the other things, making sure you're getting plenty of sleep, you're hydrating properly, you're mitigating stress and managing stress. You have some sort of mindful practice is always a good idea. So some sort of meditative or therapeutic process that you have in your life to help you mitigate stress. This is the longest video I've ever done in my entire life, and if you've stayed with me this long, bless you, you're amazing. I hope this has been helpful. The only reason I really wanted to do this video is because I've been getting so many questions about a lot of these sort of really extreme dieting protocols, and it doesn't have to be so extreme. It can be really, really simple if you find what works for you and just stick with it for a long period of time. All right, hope you guys are having a fantastic day. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys later.